Today, we will be discussing the dual self model of recruiting, starring Christian Robinson. Christian is from Lawrenceville, Georgia, out of Greater Atlanta Christian High School. In high school, he was a very talented athlete and was recruited by schools in the SEC as well as schools from across the nation, becoming one of the nation's best prospects. Before countdown to signing day, Christian had a tough decision to make and had to decide between his top four schools. His first school was the University of Florida. Deciding to take a visit to the University of Florida, while on his visit, he was able to tour the campus, meet current players, and also meet Coach Urban Meyer. Soon, Christian's hot state of mind was completely taken over. During this time, he was having so much fun, meeting a lot of people, and he wanted to commit to the Gator Nation without thinking the decision through. He also wanted to be a part of one of the nation's best recruiting classes. Luckily, after his visit, he returned to his home in Atlanta, and his cold state began to take over. He began to ponder. Even though Florida was fun, it would be a long way from home. I wouldn't get to see my family as often, and the Florida weather just wasn't what I expected. Christian decided to take his second visit to Ole Miss. At Ole Miss, he was greeted by one of the nation's known recruiters, Ed Orgeron. Coach O told him about the positives of being an Ole Miss Rebel. He told Christian that he could play as a true freshman, wear his high school jersey number, and also be an NFL prospect within 3 years. Christian's high emotional state began to take control of him, and he thought to himself, man, forget about Florida. I'm going to be an Ole Miss Rebel. But first, I have to think things over. On his flight home, Christian felt a sudden chill over his body, and his cold state began to kick in. He began to think to himself, man, Ole Miss is too far away. I will never be able to see my family in Atlanta, or nor do I know anyone in Mississippi. On his third visit, he visited Georgia Tech. Yes, he went to that school in Atlanta, Georgia Tech. Immediately, Christian's hot state mind took over. He was very close to home. He could go home for his mother's dinner if he wanted. He was close to his friends, and of course, he loved the nightlife in Atlanta. The Georgia Tech visit was almost perfect. Not having to travel that far to go home, in the cold winter of Atlanta, he spoke to his parents on the way home from the Georgia Tech visit. Christian's head was spinning on which decision to make, and his cold state of mind started to think. Georgia Tech is very close to home. He wouldn't become independent, and their program is not winning at the moment. Christian decided to take his last visit to the University of Georgia, where he met his host, Brandon Wood. Brandon showed Christian the great time and everything that the downtown life of Athens had to offer. It didn't take Christian long to arrive in his hot state. He felt the family atmosphere on the team. He also had a chance to meet with the coach, Mark Richt. By getting to know Coach Richt, he could really tell Coach Richt cared about his players. And the impression that Coach Richt left on Christian had him thinking about the weekend the whole time. On his way home, Christian was still thinking about the University of Georgia, so he went to the fridge and grabbed a soda to cool off. In his cold state, Christian said Georgia will provide a good education, Mark Richt cares about his players, and it isn't too close to home, but it's just far away. On National Signing Day, Christian came down to two schools, Georgia and Georgia Tech. He agreed with his cold state of mind and thought about the long-term benefits he would receive from being in the Georgia program. He felt like Georgia would provide him with the best education, and he would want it to be a part of their tradition.